Well, hello there, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Paul de Guzman Presents Art. So, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. It'll help with the momentum of the channel and it'll make me very happy. Also, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, also known as the City of Vancouver. And in the City of Vancouver, we are on Commercial Street. We're visiting the Equinox Gallery, which is in the intersection of Commercial Street and Stainsbury Street, I think. So we're just going to follow the arrow, and we're going to go inside the gallery. And we're going to go and have a look at the work of Kim Dorland, who is an Ontario-based artist showing his paintings in the gallery. Actually, this is the entrance to the gallery. I'm just gonna go and have a look at the gallery door. Usually this door is closed, so you can go and have a look, but it's such a nice day today that everything is open so that there's a little bit of breeze coming in. So we're just gonna do a little pan of the show. This is the first piece that you're gonna see in the show. It's one of the smaller pieces in the show. And we're just gonna go over there and have a look at the title of the show, which is Kim Dorland, The Moment Before, The Moment After. So we're just gonna do a pan of the show. It's quite a cohesive show. It's gonna go over here as well. Few pieces there, and then there's some pieces over here. We're gonna go and have a look at all of the pieces individually. I also would like to note that if you refer to the description area of this video, it will have website links for Equinox Gallery, the times that they're open, their address, a press release, and website links. Let's start with this one. There's a lot of trees in the show. What do I know about Kim Dorland? Well, I've been following his work for a few years now, and I really like how he uses a lot of really thick, gooey paint, but he also juxtaposes it. You see here? That's like really thick paint. There's this sense of three-dimensionality. This is actually kind of like this particular painting. It's actually a little bit reserved on the application of the thick paint. We're going to go into another painting later and have a look at them. You know, now that I'm looking at this from this point of view, there's almost like this, I don't know, Hockney-esque quality in terms of the saturation of color. And I have to admit, the saturation of color is the one that really drew me to the work of Kim Dorland in the first place. Pardon my speaking voice. I had some spicy food today, and there was this bit of chili that got stuck in my throat, and I was coughing for about 5 minutes. But you see how it's really nice and thick? But there's also this sense of, I guess you can call it a saturation of color. I was kind of having some inner dialogue about these paintings, because usually when I do these videos, it's usually the second time that I visit the gallery, because I wanted to sort of collect my thoughts regarding how I feel about the works that are on display, because sometimes I don't really have anything to say about the works. But here, I really like the application of the paint. And when you look at, let's say, when I mentioned before the saturation of the paint, there's this sense of garishness about it. I don't mean garishness in terms of, like, here, let's have a look at this one. It's like this sort of like this pinkish color that's mixed in with that really intense, I don't know what that's called, an ultramarine blue or something like that. It's almost like artificial, but at the same time, it works. You know, only a really good colorist can actually come up with that. And there's these balancing sort of like dabs of paint right there that tends to balance out the composition in a way. I mean, garish is not really a bad word. I tend to sort of think of it as like a word that tends to sort of refer to decadence. Because I remember when I was looking at a lot of Japanese woodblock prints from the late 19th century, it took the Japanese woodblock printmakers some time to actually get used to the saturation of paint, the saturation of color. Because before that, they were actually using Japanese natural dyes. You know, so the greens are very, very subtle, the browns are very subtle, and then suddenly they started importing aniline dyes from Germany, and they're very saturated. And it took them a few years, maybe up to about 4 or 5 years, to just get used to the saturation of color. And that period in Japanese ukiyo-e woodblock print history is called the decadent period. And so there's a certain sense of decadence about these paintings. There's also this, I really love this cat. Let's have a look at the cat. There's also this sense of like northern hemisphere nocturne about them. There's a sense of Edvard Munch. There's even a sense of Peter Doig and Tal R. Tal R is an artist based in Copenhagen. And Peter Doig is an artist based in Scotland, and there's this sense about saturation of color and how they represent the wilderness in terms of like a cornucopia of decadent color. Like this one, for example, is titled, I think it is titled Magnolia. But you have the black and the salmon colored, even pink, that tends to sort of like just work really well together. There's an abstracted and expressionist quality. But you know what? There's only so much you can do in terms of describing the painting. So these are all oil on linen. And as much as I like to describe the paintings, there's also this reminiscent art historical sensibility about them, especially in Canadian landscape painting. When you look at, let's say, paintings by the Group of Seven, which is basically 7 white men painting in the wilderness of northern Canada in Ontario in the late 19th century. And their sensibilities are more impressionistic, because around that time, Impressionism is very much on the menu of a lot of painters. But a lot of their depictions are of nature because they painted from nature. And this is probably one of the more reminiscent of the Group of Seven paintings, I would say. Perhaps an homage. And this also has a lot of thick paint being applied to it. I'm a sucker for big, thick, gooey paint. Just gonna go back, and you're just gonna go closer. I've never tried painting. I've always kind of like been intimidated by the act of painting because it's just something that has kind of like intimidated me. First, there's like composition, then there's color saturation, then there's color theory, then there's the actual technical aspects of actually making paintings. And the one thing that I really like about Kim Dorland's works Yeah, and basically, this is just the simplicity of the titles. I think this one is called Division. And so most of the paintings are kind of like cityscapes with a lot of nature depicted in them. And then you have areas like this, for example, which is kind of like more of a wash. Little dripped thin paint washes. And then you have the thickness of the paint right there. They're very beautiful paintings, I think, anyways. That is my uncritical estimation of the works. So hopefully, we're just going to go do a little last minute pan of all of the works here. I really like that cat painting and that aquamarine and pink painting. But these two are really quite well paired, I think. I don't know if I actually went in and did like a really good cross section of this surface, but they're kind of very luscious. Okay, so I think this show is going to be on for another couple of weeks, maybe 3. This is one of my favorite paintings because I just like green, that's all. Because I really like green. So, if you lasted this long, thank you very much for watching it. And I'm sure you can click the thumbs up button because you really like it. Also, just a reminder that if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And on that note, I'm going to say my farewells. Again, we are at the Equinox Gallery looking at the works of Kim Dorland, an Ontario-based artist. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you. I'm out of here.